response from people, isn't it? To kind of feel that, that initial response from an audience.
It's so much fun. I mean, we're coming out on streaming, which is great because a lot of people will see it, but there's nothing like a live theater full of people. So thank you so much. Thanks everybody for coming too.
Thank you.
Really appreciate it. Yeah.
Rob.
Hi.
Yes, from the mind of Rob Yescombe.
Yeah, Rob, this mind. Yeah. Where did the idea come from? What was the catalyst? What was this kind of seed of?
Interesting. My background's in video games, and it's almost like when you're designing a game, you're looking for a single rule that's going to be an engine for different types of fun. So I do a lot of that 9 to 5, and so here I hit upon this singular rule. Well, that's more fun than I think I can do in something in that side, and it felt like there was a story there, and it felt like we could talk about something fun and interesting. And that was the genesis.
Particularly in the States, of setting it there.
Well, I think it's something that could arguably go anywhere, right?
Exactly.
In terms of, though, I mean, Paul, this has been something, you're a big fan of Jackie Chan films, which we were talking about earlier, and kind of being able to embrace that kind of wonderful storytelling within this story. But in terms of, the ridiculous nature really of kind of what these people are trying to do, were there any moments where you go, no, we can't do that? In terms of those situations with those set pieces and with the action and those kind of things, you were just kind of, let's just go for it.
We did totally want to go for it. I mean, what the genius of what Rob did was the fact that he put the rule in that there's no guns allowed, because that just made it more fun and able to be a total physical comedy. Because if there was guns, I wouldn't have done the movie if there was guns, because all somebody has to do is be far away and shoot her. But the fact that you have to face to face kill somebody, which you realize how hard it is to actually kill somebody, so it became such a Jackie Chan movie for me, because I'm a huge Jackie Chan fanatic. I mean, that's my favorite kind of physical comedy. And when I read this, it was just like, that's my chance to do it, because if you watch Jackie Chan movies, he's always in over his head. He's not going in looking for a fight. He's like, his is the comedy of get away from me, and that's why those fights are so much fun. And so when I read this, it was just like, this is the chance to do that, because that's Nora Awkwafina's character.
Yeah, and Jackie made a 40-year career of saying, I don't want any trouble.
Yeah.
And it's such a perfect way of, the thing that Jackie was always so good at, and this is an influence on the movie and on both of us, is that it's not about the bloodshed, it's about the circus of action, the joy of performance, which really is something that James Young, our action coordinator, really brought through all of that.
Was that a joyous part for you of kind of having that dance with having those set pieces and really kind of going for that action side of it?
Yeah, I mean, I love that. I did a movie called Spy, which had a lot of. Thank you. No, but that was kind of in the same vein of like somebody who's kind of doesn't really know what they're doing, gets stuck in these situations. And there's a scene in this when she gets chased by an assassin into this kitchen, and it's basically kind of a Jackie Chan scene, and that was the inspiration. And I had so much fun shooting that, and when I watched the movie, I was like, I wish I had more of that. And so when I read this, like, this is the chance to have a whole movie filled with it.
And this is also my chance to say Spy was an enormous influence in the writing of this. Before Paul and I even met, that was the thing I was looking to as a North Star in quality and tone.
You have, historically have this wonderful way of casting brilliant, kind of relationships and chemistry between people. Bridesmaids, I'm going to use as a great example. Where do I start to talk to you about that all night? But we won't, because we're going to hear you talk about Jackpot. But with regards to, you take a risk, don't you, when you cast people, because as much as you want that chemistry to be there, it might not be there in certain situations. John and Awkwafina in this are just, I just want more. Because there's just feels like a natural connection between the two of them. Was that obvious in their first meeting and with read-throughs or rehearsals?
Well, this was a unique movie because it came to me with them already attached, and Rob had already done a pass on the script to make it Nora's voice. Because I know, the backstory did fill me in on that, because her character went through a lot of iterations, right? She
did. I don't know how much we can talk about the origin of it, but originally it was written for Michelle Yeoh and Emily Clark, who of course were in Last Christmas.
Yeah.
And again, your work in that movie was such an influence on it. But once we found John, it seemed like, okay, I see the comedy in this guy and this character. And the minute Nora came on board, to be honest, there wasn't a massive adjustment there because the comic tone of that role was already there, and she just, she filled it up.
But you really found her voice, because here's my backstory on it. It was sent to me by, I did a movie called The School for Good and Evil, and it was produced by this company, RK Productions, and they were the ones that were working with Rob, and so they sent me this script because we had fun working together, and it was called Grand Theft Lotto. And I was like, that sounds really stupid. I'm not going to read the script. And I put it aside. I put it on my pile. And it was really my producing partner, Laura Fisher, called me up a few days later and said, like, I just read this and it's really funny. You got to read it. And Awkwafina and John Cena are attached. I was like, okay. And it just, 40 pages in, I was just like, I have to do this. I really kind of fell in love with it. But when you hire... When you're working with big movie stars, you don't like get to audition them and say like, okay, can you guys come in and read together? We'll see if you have chemistry. You're just like, okay, I guess it'll work. And I didn't know, but I've had that a number of times with movie stars, and great movie stars can find chemistry because they are like great tennis players who know they have to have a good opponent. And they play with each other, and they want to also make each other look good as well as they want to make themselves look good. And the nice thing about this movie is we kind of shot it, for movies you're usually shooting the finale first, and then you're all over the place with it. We were able to kind of shoot this movie basically in order. So like in that dojo scene and the yoga room, that's the first time that John and Nora worked together. So their relationship kind of built naturally over the course of the movie, and it was fun to see that the chemistry build between them. So it was, but it's always a risk. You don't know if it's going to work.
What's it like seeing that kind of come to life, in terms of you've got these two incredible talents?
Oh, I mean, their charisma is just gushing from the screen, isn't it? That also, I think part of the vitality of the movie is that so much of it is in camera, in the way that those types of movies have always been. But yeah, I can't imagine a better pairing than those two.
Yeah, and that's really important to me, to make sure everything's in camera. I have such CGI fatigue, and it's creeping its way into action movies now, where a lot of action sequences have a lot of CGI, and I'm like, that's not the fun of an action movie. To me, the action movie is fun because you're like, oh my god, they really did that.
It's circus in the way that we keep coming back to Jackie Chan. That was his origin, of course, was through Chinese circus.
Yeah.
But did your background in writing for games, did that really help influence bringing those pieces to life in
for
a
sure,
way?
Yeah. So much of game design and game writing is about trying to find interesting ways to solve problems. And this movie just presents problem after problem after problem after problem after problem. And I think when it comes to film, that's how you discover a character, is how are they going to solve and engage with this individual problem. So there's a lot of commonality.
Did you have a favourite scene?
I love the karate.
It's the yoga karate scene.
Yeah, because that's the most Jackie Chan, because that's literally the moment of like, she has no idea what's going on, everyone's trying to kill her, they're all professional fighters, and she's just desperately trying to get herself out of trouble. It's funny, when we were first kind of putting this together, I had all this angst. I was like, well, wait, how is this going to be real? Because everybody would just kill her. Like, it should be overwhelmed, but then realized, oh no, because of the rules, you don't want anybody else to kill her. So they're going to work as hard to stop other people from getting to her as they are trying to get to her. And so that's what created this great mayhem of like, it's fun to sometimes when if you get to watch the movie again, watch in the background, all the fighting that's happening by people trying to get to her and other people are taking them down.
There's so many gags hidden in the background of those fights.
It's pretty tense. It's worth another watch.
Can we talk about John Cena for a second as well?
Yeah.
I just really nearly sang his theme tune out loud to you all. What's the reality of working with someone who just feels like they love what they do so much that they're kind of willing to kind of give 200% and just have fun in whatever's placed in front of them, really?
Well, that's all I ever ask out of anybody that I work with. Comedy can't have any vanity, because that's really the death of comedy. Like, I can't look back. It's like, well, okay, then I can't work with you. And the great thing about John, I'd never met him before. I was a big fan, and I had a Zoom with him before, just to make sure he was on, because he was, he had been with this project for a while. I wanted to make sure he was happy with me doing it. And the first thing he said was like, I just want to say this, you do not have to make me look cool. And I was like, well, that's music to my ears, because I wasn't gonna make you look cool, and now I don't have to. But that's all you can have, you know, because, and I, one of the things that drew me to many things that drew me to the script was that he's not like machismo coming in. He's like a big nerd, and the fact that, you know, the gag that made me fall in love with him was the whole thing about when he puts the helmet on the woman before she kicks her out of the car, and it's like, why'd you do that? It's like, I'm not gonna throw somebody out of a car with a moving car without a helmet. I'm not a monster. And you go, oh, it's great. This is his job. He doesn't want to hurt people. He just needs to protect his person, and he's desperately trying, you know, with the, recovery position, which James Young and his cast, in his gang, thought was the funniest thing ever.
Actually, it's interesting for the stunt performers, because so much of what they do, they're usually evil guys in masks, and they got to act, which they don't often get to do, and getting to do comedy, which they don't often do. And on Cena, I mean, everybody knows he's a very kind, generous, funny guy. He's also an intensely intelligent man. Has taught himself Hindi, taught himself Mandarin, teaching himself jazz piano when he's not shooting. Super smart guy. And as far as the CGI goes, I mean, we only had to reduce the size of his hands by 400%. So it really wasn't that much.
They are like big canned hams, exactly.
Comedy's such a unique beast, isn't it, in terms of it allows you to kind of almost kind of dive into a buffet of other genres to accompany it in a way. What do you love about what comedy gives you the opportunity to do as a storyteller?
I think comedy's the greatest way to tell stories. Look, I love heavy dramas and all that, but at the same time, I watch heavy dramas and sometimes I get frustrated because I go like, that's not what life is like. I mean, you're in some of the worst situations, the saddest situations. Somebody's going to try to make a joke. Somebody's going to, because we just can't take all that down. There has to be some kind of a release valve. And, I made a movie called The Simple Favor, which is, a thriller, but I wanted it to be funny in a Hitchcockian way where the stakes are high and the drama's high, but there's weird characters in it. There's extreme reactions to things, and that's what I think is funny, and it's a very effective way of telling stories, but you have to be very careful. If you go too far, it gets silly, and audiences these days hate silly. I mean, that's been the biggest change in comedy over the last 15 years, or 20 years, really. I mean, if you look at the comedy of the 90s, it was very broad and over the top in a very funny way. Look at Jim Carrey and those people. But at the same time, now I think audiences have gotten very sensitive about things that don't feel authentic. I think, and I personally say it's because we've now spent the last 2 decades pretty much watching YouTube videos of people getting hurt in real life and having reactions to the thing, and we're watching real life. It's funny. And so now when you hear like written jokes that sound very presentational, people are like, ugh. That's why there's so many jokes that I just put into I've never done a gag reel at the end of a movie, but we had so many leftover jokes. but audiences, we had jokes stacked in there, and they only wanted a certain amount of gags that were literally just in the moment of somebody's in danger, they say something funny that feels natural in the moment. And I think it's kind of cool. I think it's a cool moment in comedy that comedy's not joke driven, it's behavior driven, but behavior of extreme characters and funny people.
Yeah, I think the thing that holds it all together is that both John and Nora are very honest performers. That's the thing that makes you want to laugh with them when that stuff is happening, and lets you enjoy the jokes that are written jokes. And I agree also, comedy is the thing that insulates us from life. We need a little insulation.
And that's the beautiful job that you have to do to kind of craft that. The script's there, but then you also have the freedom that you give your performers to explore, to play as well. And you've got to navigate that line really kind of carefully so that you aren't falling across either side as well, in terms of keeping the audience happy, but also keeping you happy in terms of what you're trying to create.
Yeah, well, you kind of, when you're shooting a movie, you kind of throw a lot of stuff against the wall because you want to have enough ammo going into your test screenings to go, I think these jokes are funny, and I think these moments work. And then the audience will tell you. And then, I do there are test screenings with recruited audiences, which basically there's companies that recruit people when they're coming out of movie theaters. Would you like to see this movie? So you get 250 people in a movie theater who don't know you. You know, a lot of filmmakers do friends and family screenings, which is worthless because your friends and family are going to be nice. They're going to say, a bunch of people off the street are going to be really honest, and sometimes you want to kill them all, but, but you're like, they didn't laugh at that joke, and we thought it was funny, but if they didn't laugh, and sometimes I'll think a joke, I'm just so dedicated to joking, like, well, let's try it again, maybe they're a bad audience. The second time they don't laugh, it's like, get it out of there, because if you stack up a bunch of jokes that people don't think are that funny, they lose faith in you as a filmmaker, and they go like, I'm not in good hands. They're like, I know that was supposed to be funny, and I didn't laugh at it, so now I don't know if I trust this filmmaker. It knows what's funny, and then they'll just completely turn on you.
You sat in the back of the room with like a little notepad and stuff whilst the test screening.
Well, no, what we do is when you do a test screening, they put up these kind of night vision cameras, and we record the audience watching the movie, which it's very funny because you just watch a lot of people eating. Realize how much people eat during movies is unbelievable. But then we record their laughs, and so it's a great way of going, because you have different memories of a screening after you have it, and you're like, I think that really killed. It's like, well, let's go to the tape, and you're like, oh, they got like a chuckle, and you're like, well, let's get the chuckle out of there. Let's get a solid laugh. But it's also a great way when you work with the studio, because they'll have jokes they just don't like, and I'm like, it got a giant laugh, and they're like, well, Jim, they're like, well, here's the tape.
In your face.
Yeah.
Well, we've got time for a couple of questions from our audience. We've got a mic up top as well, so we'd like to get two down here and one up the top if we can. Straight away, literally touching the ceiling with your hand. That's lovely, thank you so much.
It kind of goes along with you saying that 90s film was pretty easy in terms of comedy, but Sean William Scott as Stifler was one of my first crushes. Shame to say. But how did you get him involved? Because I love his cameo at the beginning because it's such a shock.
Yeah, no, he's great. He was. I did a TV show. It was the American version of This Country. We did it for Fox. We did it for 2 seasons, and he played Father Joe. He played the priest, you know. And I just fell in love with the guy. I mean, he's the sweetest guy ever. I mean, it's so funny he plays these badass characters. If you meet him, he's just like, oh my gosh, hey, how's it going? It's so great. And he's just like this lovely guy, and so I was like, well, how funny, we're gonna have Stifler, you know? And I wanted to do a little fake out, you know, like, oh, he's one of the stars of the movie, and like, no, we just off him, but he's great, he's the best.
Always be Stifler. Always be
Always be
Stifler, yeah. Do we have one up top from anybody up there whilst we've got a microphone up there? I've got more down here if not. I just wanted to give you guys the opportunity. Okay, anyone else down here before we get into some serious business as well? Did I see someone there? Yeah, there we go, sorry. Hello, sorry, right down the front, I'm so sorry. Hello.
Hi there, I'm Joey. I was really impressed with the actual movie. It made me laugh so much, but most importantly, I love the idea of addressing diversity on screen, especially in Hollywood cinema, and my dissertation at university was race relations in Hollywood cinema. So for me to see that become a reality, and seeing another movie, Crazy Rich Asians, starring Henry Golding, who you've worked with, to see someone else, have their break on screen. I just love the idea of seeing more of that in the future. Do you think that's something that Hollywood's moving towards in terms of filmmaking, giving more diversity? And I know Eva Longoria is really pushing hard as a director to kind of change that. How do you feel about that?
I mean, Hollywood's definitely trying to be better. For my whole theory is if a movie doesn't look like real life, then you failed. In real life is this beautiful melting pot of people, and I just want to see everybody on screen, and I don't feel like you have to justify why different people are in different roles. It's just it's anywhere you go, you're dealing with everybody. So, and all the people, I know so many talented people, of all colors and creeds and all that, and it's just I just want the best people in the movie. And so if you throw the door open wide, you get such beautiful diversity of not only people, but of talents. And I just love it. I mean, it's really, when you look at some older stuff, and even some stuff I did, which wasn't as diverse, I go oh God, it was such a wasted opportunity. So I don't think we're going back, because I don't think audiences will put up with it, and Hollywood's very aware of it and is trying to be better at it.
Thank you for your question. Thank you.